What's up my peoples, it's Mohammed here from tekkerreviews, back again with another video. And today I'm gonna show you how you can get your PS5 controller looking like this using the EXTREMERATE Chrome Gold Shell Replacement Kit. Now before we start guys, I just want to give a quick disclaimer before we get started. By no means am I an expert in controller modding or shell replacement, and this is actually the first time I'm ever doing this. So make sure you guys do all the research you can and watch as many tutorials possible before giving this a go. Now with that being said, be sure to hit that like button below if you find this video helpful or if you're planning to mod your PS5 controller too. Now without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Right, so first things first, let's check out all the packaging that comes with the shell replacement kit. Now before we start, I just want to give a huge shout out to EXTREMERATE for sending me all the items you see in today's video. EXTREMERATE are always coming through and supporting the channel, so make sure you guys check them out after today's video. I'll also add a link to their website in the description below. So going back to the packaging and contents, the first thing you will see is a 1-year warranty card, which is great to see, followed by the packaging for the front shell and touchpad, which is very minimal and clean, only containing the EXTREMERATE logo. Now inside you have the front shell itself, followed by the touchpad, tools and screws for installation, one replacement bracket for the touchpad, and finally another 1-year warranty card. In the next package we have the back replacement shell, as well as tools and screws for installation. And finally, we have the last two packages, which contain the gold and black replacement buttons. Now before we get started guys, just make sure you have a large working area so that you can keep everything organized. Start by grabbing your prying tool and unclip the two bottom sections shown on screen. Next, unclip the sides and don't be afraid to apply a little pressure. Once the sides are done, unclip the bottom part of the cover. If done correctly, your controller should then look like this. Now here the cover should easily come off, however you'll see in the video that the cover was still connected on top, which prevented me from removing this part. Once released, I was then able to take the cover off, and that was step 1 complete. So next we want to remove the L1 and R1 buttons using the prying tool. Now one very helpful tip here is that if you push down on the trigger buttons, it will give you better access to remove the buttons. Here I'm going to start off with the L1 button, followed by the R1 button while pushing down on the trigger. Now just in case your controller turns on like my one did, just hold the PS button for 10 seconds and that should power off the controller. Next we want to remove 2 screws from the bottom and 2 on top in order to remove the back shell and expose the internals. Grab your screwdriver and start removing the screws. Once we have the screws removed, grab your prying tool and start unclipping the sides of the controller. But before we start, first unclip these 2 latches here, as it will make removing the shell a lot easier. Now since the screws have been removed, the back shell should come off once we release each side. Gently push up and the back shell should then pop off, exposing the controller internals. Next, we want to remove the battery from the controller. by disconnecting this wire here Now when doing this, try not to pull too hard as you can rip the wires. I found it easier to remove when doing a left to right motion, which should then easily pop off the controller. However, if you have prying tools, you can also use them as well. Next, we want to remove the battery holder by removing the screw shown on screen. Now to completely remove the battery holder, we need to disconnect the mic ribbon cable from the controller motherboard, and there you have it, one mic and battery holder removed. So here we're going to remove the two screws in order to disconnect the internals from the front controller shell. Next, we need to remove 4 ribbon cables from the controller motherboard shown here on screen. Now, I accidentally forgot to remove the bottom ribbon cable, so just make sure you guys don't miss this one. Here we're just going to unclip the motherboard from the internals. Now, in case it doesn't come out guys, like my one did, just double check to see if the thumbsticks are out correctly. And there you have it. Now, as mentioned before, I forgot to take out the last ribbon cable, so here I'm just going to remove that one now. Again, do a left to right motion to easily remove the ribbon cable. Next, I'm going to remove the internals from the front shell, which should easily pop off since the screws are removed. From here, we will then remove the rubber padding for the direction keypad, and then remove the direction keypad itself. Next, we will do the same for the action buttons by removing the rubber padding, and then the buttons as well. Now there's one last piece of rubber here which needs to be removed, which is actually very important and can cause issues if not installed correctly, but more on that issue later on. Next, remove the options and select button, or whatever they're called now. And then move on to the PlayStation button by removing the rubber padding, followed by the button itself. From here, we then need to remove the microphone. Now this step was quite tedious, but just ensure you're being careful when removing the ribbon cable. Once done, remove the mute button and start working on the touchpad by removing the screw here. The touchpad should then pop out when pressing down. And there you have it, one touchpad successfully removed. Now for this step, we just want to take apart the touchpad in order to add our replacement gold one. Once disassembled, you should then see the motherboard connected to the touchpad, which will now need to be removed. Now unfortunately the motherboard is stuck to the back via adhesive, so we need to heat up the glue in order to remove it. So there's two ways you can go about this guys, either by using a heat gun or hairdryer. Now off camera guys, I was able to remove the motherboard, which required some pressure applied, which didn't come off easily, but once done, I just thought I'd show you guys where I was lifting from. And that's it guys, disassembly complete. Now it's time to put together your new replacement controller shell. Here we are just going to work backwards and repeat the steps that were carried out. Now I forgot to do this previously, but start by removing the plastic rings from the thumbsticks and then place this onto the new front shell. Now we're just going to put the front shell to the side and then remove the battery padding from the original back shell. Place the padding onto the new back shell. And that's pretty much it for this piece. Next we're going to move on to the new touchpad and start by placing the motherboard on top. Now the previous adhesive should stick in place. Once done, place the touchpad to the side and then grab the new front shell again. Clip the touchpad frame into place and then move on to the next part of the touchpad. Now for some reason guys, I was having issues putting this part back in place. So instead, I ended up using the one provided by EXTREMERATE, which fitted in perfectly without any issues. Next, add the replacement touchpad containing the motherboard and then feed the ribbon cable through the hole. From here, insert your screw to lock the parts in place. Now, since EXTREMERATE provided extra screws, I'm just going to insert one onto the other side as well, which actually didn't have one for some reason. Insert the mute button, as well as the PS button and rubber padding. Next, we're going to add the microphone in again. Now for this, just make sure you feed in the ribbon cable through carefully without damaging. Now this is very important guys, and where I made a huge mistake. When adding the rubber padding, just make sure the arrow is facing up, otherwise you'll have issues when inserting your buttons like I did. Next, insert your action buttons. And then add your options and select buttons. From here, add the rubber padding for the action buttons. And then insert the direction keypad. Finalize by adding the rubber padding and then move on to the next step. Carefully place the internals on top of the new shell. Now, if done correctly, it should fit in flush without any problems. While doing this, don't forget to feed the touchpad ribbon cable through this hole here, and then mount the motherboard back in its correct place. Make sure you have the ribbon cables out of the way when doing this, and then clip the motherboard back inside. Again, if you're having issues, just make sure the thumbsticks have been put through correctly. Next, we're going to connect all 4 ribbon cables again. And then place the battery holder on top. Now, before screwing this in, just make sure you add your second microphone piece onto the battery holder. And then place the battery holder into the controller. Insert your screw and then add your ribbon cable into the motherboard. Insert the 2 screws to connect the internals to the front replacement shell. And then add your battery by inserting the cable back in place. Next, add the back shell onto the controller. Press each side to make sure the clips have connected, and then connect the 2 latches towards the bottom. Next, we're just going to add our 4 screws back in place, with 2 on top and 2 towards the bottom. From here, add your L1 and R1 buttons. Now complete the install by adding the final plastic cover. Finalize by powering the controller, and there you have it guys, 1 shell replacement install complete. Now for some testing. In this part of the video, I'm just going to make sure everything is working correctly by playing Astro's Playroom and seeing if the touch and buttons are working as expected. am super happy with my new gold PS5 controller and the way it turned out towards the end. All my friends and family who have seen this in person are honestly blown away, to the point where some actually offered to buy this controller off me. Seriously guys, I was so scared at first to do this, as I've never done this type of thing before, and I thought I'd end up breaking my PS5 controller. But now it's done. I'm so glad I did, and will definitely be doing more later on in the future. In terms of drawbacks, the only two things I noticed was that if you purchased the chrome gold or shiny colours, then the controller will literally become a fingerprint magnet. Also, in comparison to the original controller shell, I do feel like this one lacks a little grip and can be slippery at times. However, if these two issues don't bother you as much, then I highly recommend trying this out guys, and getting yourself a brand new PS5 controller shell. In regards to pricing, you can pick up the front, back, touchpad and button replacement shells from Amazon for a total of £68, and I'll add the links to purchase in the description below. But that's all from me guys. Are you into controller modding? And is a shell replacement something that you would also do? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Mohammed from Tekker Reviews, and I'll see you all in the next video.